what it means to be a patriot and whether players should protest as they did. So we're bringing the discussion home. We have here to argue both sides of the issue Bill Mick, host of the Bill Mick Show on WMMB, and Alton Edmond, founder of Edmond Law Firm in Brevard. Sorry. Let's start with how do you guys feel about this issue? Should these players take a stand and protest? Is it the right place? Is sports the right place for this?
You want to take this one, Bill?
Sure, I'll be glad to. They absolutely have the right to protest, but in this circumstance, they're employees. They work for the individual teams that are a member of the league that is the NFL. This is a workplace. There are rules to be had during the workplace, and the president, although indelicate in how he said it, said the right thing. If you're not going to follow the workplace rules, if you're going to do something to damage your employer's product, it's time for you to go. You want to protest this? Protest it all you want outside the stadium, anywhere you want to go outside the stadium. Inside the stadium, protest just because you have a national stage that your employer has handed you. Not the way to do it. And it's harming the NFL product. It's hard. The ratings are down. There are people burning their jerseys in the streets of Pittsburgh and elsewhere. It's not good for the product.
Should the president use the SOB word?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
How do you feel, Alton?
I agree with the first part of what Bill said. They absolutely do have the right to protest and to express their thoughts, their values, their feelings. And it is very interesting that for many, the forum in which they choose to do so is an issue. But the NFL players, they use what they have. They have a national stage. They have a spotlight on them when they're at football games. And what better place, if you want to draw attention to your cause and raise awareness, do you do something like this? And so I understand, I do understand both sides of the debate as it relates to the forum and the issues with that. But I also understand that public forum is where this is meant to happen due to the purpose, which is to raise awareness. Now, in terms of the workplace and that issue, I do think it's a relevant issue and a relevant point of discussion. However, in most states, there are rules about employment and what reasons you could use to fire someone. And in the state of Florida, which has some of the least friendly rules in terms of protecting employees, we have a right to work state where basically you can fire someone for good cause or no cause, but not for bad cause. What is bad cause? Well, violation of constitutional rights happens to be a bad cause, a reason for which you cannot constitutionally justify a firing of someone. And so when we talk about the workplace and whether it should be a fireable offense, protesting, standing up for whatever viewpoint you have and exercising your First Amendment right, that's an issue, a constitutional issue, one that's very important.
Even though the First Amendment only applies to the government, right? It's protection from the government to be able to have practice their religion or say whatever you want. So even in that case, do you think there would be a legal issue if these NFL teams started firing people? I
think it could still create some tort liability and to add to what they're already losing in ratings and losing in viewership, to add to it lawsuits for violation of rights, for suppression of free thought and free speech. I think it would create.
Gotta disagree. I've got to disagree though, Alton, because we all give up certain of our rights to have the employment that we find gainful for us and our families. If you join the military, if you join the police department, I've done both, you give up rights to be part of those organizations. You surrender your rights to the will of, in this case, the government employer, because there are things you can't do or say as a policeman, as a member of the military. It's the same in the civilian work world. I work in a world, you work in a world where the First Amendment is heralded. Do you have work rules that you have to play by? You absolutely do. If you violate them, are you subject to discipline? You absolutely are, as am I. Now, in talk radio, that's supposedly very broad, and I agree that it is. And largely, we are free to do and say
Same thing for
what we want. Absolutely. But When I cross the line, I'm on my own. My company tells me, go say what you want. Be common sense about what you say and how you say it. So there are rules for all of us. We all give up certain rights to have the employment that we choose. And with those rights you give up are giving your will to that of the employer as to how they want conduct to be. I don't think you fire them right off for this, Alton. I don't think you do that at all. What you do is say, like Jerry Jones was reported to have said, I don't know that he did, but that here's what we're going to do as the Dallas Cowboys. You're an employee of my organization. This is how we're going to do this. And this is the rule of the employer. Do it now. If you don't do it, we're going to discipline you.
We're actually starting to hear from readers on Facebook. Tony Camara II says, NFL is dead to me, exclamation marks. Sybil Rowland Jordan says, they can afford to buy TV time and do a nationwide outreach. They can start a positive dialogue with LEOs and inner city youth. They can promote unity within the community, hiking your leg to hypothetically pee on. Our POTUS is disrespectful and irresponsible.
There is opportunity. Back to what you said about the forum that they have where they're in the stadium. That's the workplace. That's where they're there to produce a product that we as the American people love. You can't wait for Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night, because we like the game. But now they're disparaging the game itself. They're tearing it down. And with the opportunity that they have, they've got that fame off the field too. They could call ESPN. Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser would love to have them on. The guys at the Round the Horn love to talk about this. And ESPN and a lot of the sports media outlets have very much been on the side of the protesters, but nobody's considering the expectations of an employer in the workforce and how these guys are harming their own product.
But had this been a protest if these were white players protesting a non-racial cause, do you think we would have the same outrage?
You know, once a year, players don pink socks, pink gloves.
I hate that.
Pink socks and
Tim
bad.
Tebow, who used to do the whole Jesus thing.
But you just answered your own question.
Yeah.
Jesus thing. But I mean, think about it. Every year, the entire NFL, every player is mandated by the NFL to wear pink socks, pink gloves in support of breast cancer awareness.
Officials too?
Officials too. That's not related to football.
But it's a mandate of the employer because they have a deal with the breast cancer research folks to promote that during the month of October.
My question is, if white players were protesting any cause that doesn't involve
white players have protested here.
equality.
They have joined their black teammates in this protest to some degree. Now, only 200 players reported or thereabouts NFL-wide have been participating here, but there's a protest to be had. Have it outside the stadium. This is your workplace. You're harming your product. You're harming your ability to. The problem is the NFL has been inconsistent. Take a look at, was it Randall Gay that wanted to highlight domestic violence abuse when he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers, wanted to wear the colored shoes, the spikes, and they said, no, you can't do that. Domestic violence was out, at least at that particular moment. The police supporters in Dallas at the Cowboys, they wanted to wear a star memorializing the 5 policemen that were slain in the streets of Dallas that night as they were protecting protesters, of all things. And the NFL said, no, you can't do that. The NFL's inconsistency is a problem here because if they had consistent rules in play and they were enforced by the league and the various teams, this would not be an issue. Players would know, no personal protests here, no national protests here. If you want to do it outside the stadium before and after the game, go ahead. Game time, you're working.
As it relates to the NFL, one thing that has been consistent is that the NFL their stance is that players are encouraged but not required to stand during the playing of the national anthem. Mm-hmm. And so if this is a workplace issue, if these players did give up some of their rights to do this or do that, one right that they did not surrender was the right to sit during the national anthem because the NFL has taken the stance that the NFL will support their right to protest in this manner. Now, maybe the NFL has been inconsistent in supporting other types of protest. But as it relates to this type of protest, the employer has made it clear that this is a method of protest that is acceptable, and they are acting within their rights.
If the NFL is okay
well, the
with
league
it.
has said that. The employers are the individual teams.
Yeah.
So.
But and I think Ann Smith Bortoli, she's asking, should there be a clause in their contract that says you have to stand up for the national anthem? How do you guys feel about that?
No.
How about you, Alton?
I would agree.
The
no.
clause, hey, we did that.
Okay, we're done. We're done with this conversation. Okay,
There's something wrong here. There should be a clause that you will follow the mandates of the leadership of your team, and that you will abide by workplace rules. If Team A wants to require all its players to go out, like the Cowboys, then do that. The Cowboys, I thought, was an interesting gesture. They knelt and in interlocked arms before the anthem, and then they all stood up together. Now, Jerry Jones, the owner, he likes to be in front of the camera, but I think they set a decent example there. It's okay, we understand that we have brother players around the league who are upset and want to protest in this fashion. We're going to show them we support them, but when it comes to the national anthem, we're going to stand up. The other thing is, while the NFL may be allowing this, where they're making a mistake is they're allowing it to damage their product. DirecTV is giving refunds to people who don't want the NFL
But how long would
anymore.
that? How long is that going to last? I mean, Americans love football. I wonder, like,
You've
what
got
is the
college
long...
on Thursday nights and Saturdays all day and all night. I think it'll be longer than you think.
You think so?
Absolutely, because while the players have these rights to do this, as they damage the product, people are walking away. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and I have a brother who's one, they're burning their jerseys in the streets because they're sick of it. You had an employee of the Buffalo Bills quit when he saw the kneeling protest. It hurts people in their core because they love the country, they're patriotic. I'm not saying any of these players kneeling are not patriotic, because I believe at least many of them are, if not all.
And we're going to get to that. I'm just going to read one of our readers, Tom Redmond, has commented. It's about respect. There's 24 hours in a day. The national anthem is about 1 minute. There's 23 hours and 59 minutes left to protest. Go for it. Show the respect for the anthem. And then that leads to my next question. Are they disrespecting the flag and the anthem? Is that anti-American?
Absolutely not. I mean, it was made clear from the very beginning by Kaepernick that the reason why he was kneeling was related to unarmed shootings of African American people by the law enforcement officers who were paid by taxpayers, African American and white people, and other people to protect. That was what it was about and what it was always about. Now, when he chose to do it was during the national anthem, during a portion of the program that was dedicated to showing reverence to a symbol of America, the America that is responsible for allowing the issue that Kaepernick has to go on and to continue. Exoneration after exoneration, acquittal after acquittal, many failures to prosecute, and pardons for people that do these things and support these things. That's the issue. That's always been the issue.
That was the initial
issue. Is
issue.
it anti-American?
Yes, it is.
Why?
That was the initial with Colin Kaepernick initially. The issue this last weekend was because the president stumbled out of his mouth something that maybe he shouldn't have been involved in anyway. But what he said as a businessman to other businessmen was, you got to get your employees under control. Yes, it's not patriotic. Why?
Why?
Because we've all been taught since we were children that you respect that flag, you respect the men and women who have served this country, and those especially who have made sacrifices either in death or in severe injury for making this country.
But why
what
is
it
kneeling disrespecting those who serve their country? Aren't they these people who
flag
gave their
etiquette
lives,
is to stand
didn't they
during
give,
the flag and the anthem.
But didn't
That's
they
why.
give their lives because they want to protect people's freedom of speech, freedom
Absolutely.
of religion,
Absolutely.
et cetera, et cetera?
Very, very interesting question you asked. I was speaking to my uncle this morning who served in Vietnam, and he had I asked him what he thought about the subject matter, and he said to himself he doesn't have a problem with these protests, because in his mind, what he's saying is that he was willing to sacrifice everything for that flag. And all he believes that these young men are simply doing is asking that flag to protect them, do what it's supposed to do. Because that flag is a piece of cloth, but it represents something. It represents rights. It represents the Constitution. It represents freedom of speech, freedom of establishment, freedom of thought. And it seems to me that the point is being missed, because what that flag represents is a protection of every citizen that is underneath the governance of the U.S. government, the protection of their rights to assemble and to peacefully protest, among other things.
I don't disagree with that.
Should the government and American society be doing more to protect the rights of minorities, racial and
It's the role of the government to protect the rights of everyone. One of the key things that was impressed upon me in my police academy days and in additional training since then is you are responsible for protecting the rights of everyone that you're out there serving. That includes the guys you arrest, the ones you don't get to arrest, and everybody else in play. So, yeah, even in circumstances where you do surveillance, you are getting search warrants, or you are avoiding a search warrant, or you don't need a search warrant because of exigent circumstances, you're still responsible for the rights of those individuals. And when you violate those rights, there's nothing more severe that comes down on a policeman who's gone bad than a 1983 violation brought to you by the FBI. You can do severe jail time for that.
So
well, severe would be to do that jail time, but they're not doing that jail time. And that's part of the reason why this protest is going on. What should be happening when rights are violated, when people are mistreated, when the law fails to protect those that it's meant to protect, is that there should be consequences to those involved. But those consequences are not happening. Yeah.
That's a blanket statement that's tough to back up. I'm sure it's happening in certain circumstances. In other circumstances, I'm sure you'll disagree with a verdict where I might agree with one. It just depends on perspective and where you're coming from.
Let's talk a little bit about the president. He's always, everybody has something to say about him, right? When in the aftermath of Charlottesville, he said there were fine people on both sides, and then you have players protesting, and he calls them SOBs. Was that the right? Why? I think to me it seems that this was an exaggerated reaction to an issue where we didn't have a woman who was dead, and then he calls white supremacists fine people. What do you guys think about that?
That is a perfect example of our own American hypocrisy. Just like the NFL has not been consistent when it comes to what protests that it supports, neither is America. When black people were protesting in the civil rights era of the 1960s, there were people on buses being harassed. There were people in restaurants that they couldn't eat at being harassed. My grandfather served in World War II. He came back from his service, and there were still restaurants that he couldn't eat at. There were still schools that his children, my father, couldn't attend. And so it's very interesting that there are fine people, and there are people supporting their First Amendment rights and people exercising their First Amendment rights when you have neo-Nazis in the streets running wild, which is fine. I understand that even neo-Nazis, even Klan members, they have the right to speak their mind.
They do, yeah.
They do. Of course, they must do so peacefully, and that includes not running over people and things like that. But just as they have the right to exercise their First Amendment speech, these players should have their right as well.
Was Trump's reaction, what should he have similar reactions to both protests or not?
The president's a man who was used to speaking off the cuff because he was basically accountable to no one. He was a wealthy businessman who ran his empire the way he wanted it run. Yeah. People respected him. People disrespected him. Didn't matter. He's now the president of the United States. He's in his first year in office. He's transitioning into a life where every word he says. No, I'm just saying he has not changed his personality. He is who he is. And he is used to spouting off at any moment without necessarily considering the ramifications of those words every time he talks. I think he was right in what he said about discipline and termination of players who don't come into line with employer requirements. Was his comment out of line at Charlottesville? Yeah, probably. I mean, there are lines to draw here. There are things that are right and things that are wrong. And make a decision and come down on it. What he was trying to do was not condemn anybody in Charlotte, that there were peaceful protesters and there were other protesters who were peaceful as well.
I don't understand his reluctance to call out white supremacy. Why is he so reluctant to just say, you know, it would be easy. It wouldn't stay in the news for as long as it did. And I guess my guess is he's afraid to alienate his base. Do you guys agree with that?
You think his base is white supremacist?
I don't think they're white supremacists, but I think a lot of his
because that's what Jamel Hill said on ESPN last week. Got her in a lot of trouble.
I don't think they're white supremacists. I think that he is trying to juggle not sounding too politically correct, which not being PC was the reason why he got elected.
Absolutely.
And why so many in the white working class like him. And then he also feels that, you know, I need to say what the majority of of the country wants me to say, and I think he's trying to tread carefully with this. And a lot
I don't
of
think
times
he's trying to be populist at all. I really don't. I think he's just being Donald Trump. And we're still adjusting to that as a country. We're not used to seeing presidents tweet, and I think it's unbecoming, personally, that a president's out there on Twitter doing the things he does. I would rather see him be in a meeting, and if he's got something to say it through his press secretary, or go out and say it in a press conference. But we're adjusting to how this presidency works.
I think it's interesting because, you know, excuses for Mr. Trump are made all the time. And I get that he is coming from a field where he runs a multi-billion-dollar company where he does things his way and he says what he wants, and that's the way he does business. I also get, as Bill said before, when you step into a particular role, you give up certain rights. And presidents are not exempt from the different rights that they give up. The things that they say reflect on this entire country. And so if NFL players as employees should give up their right to speak freely about certain things, shouldn't the president as an employee of an entire nation?
Well, and they're both subject, Alton, to the response and reaction of the American public. The NFL is losing viewers. President Trump may or may not be losing support. Just depends on what numbers you read today, because that changes all the time. But right now, the NFL's been in steady decline. They need to get a handle on this. They really do.
I have a hard time believing that is it because of this issue, or is it because of just changing?
No, there are several issues.
Changing culture.
Instant replay takes forever. Yeah. It makes a 3-hour game a 3.5 or 4-hour game. You know, I've got the answer to that as a former professional baseball umpire. You want to have replay? One live speed look, one replay look. If you can't change it, then the official had it right. Let's move on. Let's go. But they're killing their product in various ways, and that's just one of them.
And I want to pose a question before we finish here. What does it mean to be a patriot? What is your definition of patriotism? Is it a flag? Is it the right to protest?
We may agree here. God, family, country, in that order.
God, family, country, we will agree here. I think God, family, country, when people are not watching.
All the time. Amen.
It's really what patriotism is about. I think a lot of people, this discussion brought a lot of people out of the woodwork who sit on their couch and drink beers when the national anthem is being played during the football game.
Okay, you stand up and the national anthem. I don't either. But when I'm at a venue, absolutely I do.
Well,
and I yell at kids who are going around running their mouth. Hey, stand still and shut up.
It depends on what's going on. Even when the NFL games are going on, there are people in the concession stands eating popcorn during the national anthem.
They're not out in the venue where it's being played. I'll give them a pass.
But of course, you can hear the national anthem being played throughout the entire stadium.
Yes, you can. That's true.
You know what I mean? And so, you know, not everyone.
If I hear a parade going down the street, though, I don't stop and stand at attention if I'm in the ice cream shop. Come on.
Well, if you're as patriotic as some people claim to be, when you hear that anthem, you stand at attention.
There are those that do. There are those
but shouldn't
that
it be like
be at Patrick Air Force Base at 5 o'clock in the evening? Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I wasn't born in this country, and I moved here for several reasons. One of them is more opportunities, but one of the reasons I embrace the United States is because of what we just talked about. You know, protecting people's rights of expression, religion, et cetera, and individualism. I think that is the foundation of American society. You're free to be an individual, and when I see the president saying that you shouldn't protest or express your political views in whatever venue that is, I just think it's kind of scary. Like, where does it stop?
You got to add context, though. His context was employers need to control employees.
But why does the president care? Why is it the president's business? Is he gonna make it with every
Because of the disrespect to the military? Because of the disrespect to the country?
Isn't that a little subjective, whether it is disrespectful?
Not in my mind.
And all that Kaepernick said about his protest, the military was never even mentioned.
This last weekend was not about Kaepernick.
And the whole protest started because of him and because of the issue, and other players began to kneel in solidarity with him because of the fact that he was blackballed as a result of exercising his First Amendment
who blackballed him? He's had backup quarterback offers. He's refused them.
Okay,
he wants to be a starter.
Yeah, we'll have a next Facebook Live discussion about football
tonight on ESPN.
And I will
going at it, baby.
I growing up, I mean, to me, football is played with your feet, and it's called soccer here for some reason. But
yeah, that's a commie sport. We don't play it here.
Oh, you know what? Soccer is the most profitable sport in the world.
Profitable or popular?
Popular and
Not the most entertaining, though.
Absolutely. Snooze fest.
We can talk for like 2 hours about that.
Oh, if you want to kill a group of Europeans, just start a fight in a soccer game.
I like volleyball and gymnastics, so I am not.
Those are good sports.
Yeah. But thank you guys for being
Mary Lou
here.
Retton from my home state, by the way. Just saying.
Thank you for being here, and I'm glad we kept it civil. And
Like we weren't going to? Come on.
We're professional, of course.
Feel free to keep on commenting and sending your comments to me. You can reach me at irangel@Florida Today. Thank you for watching us. And thanks for being here again.
Thank you. It was fun. It was fun. It was fun. It was fun.